While it's difficult to resist the growth opportunities provided by emerging markets, running a successful business in many of these countries is far from easy. However, before we begin our video, we would greatly appreciate it if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel and also press the bell icon. Let's get started. Number 10. Argentina. Argentina is one of 3 South American nations to make the list of the worst countries to do business in. Out of 10 key indicators for doing business, Argentina has one of the lowest rankings when it comes to acquiring a construction permit. It takes about 1 year to get a construction permit, compared with an average of about 7 months for Latin American countries and the Caribbean. Starting a business in Argentina takes 26 days, double the time it takes on average in Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development countries. Number 9. Russia. Russia may be one of the world's fastest growing economies, but it is also one of the most difficult places to do business in. The country is the toughest place in the world for a business to get an electricity connection, taking nearly 9.5 months, almost double the time it takes in the rest of Eastern Europe and Central Asia. Russia's upcoming presidential elections have further derailed plans to reform the world's 4th biggest power market. Earlier this year, Prime Minister Vladimir Putin, who is running for president in 2012, said there would be no hike in electricity prices over the first half of next year, a move meant to appease voters ahead of the March elections. Number 8. Brazil. Brazil is the world's 8th largest economy, and its GDP growth in 2010 was 7.5%, making it attractive for foreign investment. While this economic giant provides a huge opportunity, there are also several major hurdles to doing business here. Brazil has one of the highest tax burdens of any major economy. At around 37% of GDP, firms spend about 2,600 hours a year, equivalent to 3.5 months, filling tax forms in Brazil. Firms are charged a total tax rate of more than 67%, according to the World Bank, which is 20% higher than the average for the rest of Latin America and the Caribbean. Number 7. Indonesia. Indonesia, Southeast Asia's biggest economy, is one of 3 Asian countries to make the list of the world's worst places to do business in. The country is one of the most difficult places to start a business. It takes 1.5 months to launch a business in Indonesia, nearly 3.5 times longer than the average for all OECD countries. Getting electricity in the world's 4th most populous nation also takes 20 days longer than in the rest of East Asia and the Pacific. Indonesia's infrastructure problems have long been blamed for hampering its growth. 4 out of its 5 busiest international airports are operating above capacity, and about 15 million households have no access to electricity. Number 6. India. India, the world's 4th largest economy, has seen quarterly GDP growth of around 7.5% over the past decade, but it is also one of the most difficult countries to do business in. Stories of corruption in the government are rampant in India, and it is the 2nd worst country in the world when it comes to enforcing a business contract, behind East Timor. It takes an average of nearly 4 years to enforce a contract through India's courts, in comparison to 3 years in the rest of South Asia and more than 1 year on average in OECD countries. It also ranks among the bottom 3 globally when it comes to dealing with construction permits, taking more than 7.5 months to get one. Recently, there have been growing protests from India's urban middle class against endemic political corruption and bureaucracy. Recent government scandals, including a bribery scheme involving the sale of telecom spectrum that may have cost the state up to $39 billion in revenues, have heightened the public's growing discontent with politicians. Number 5. Nigeria. Nigeria is Africa's largest oil producer, therefore a big draw for some of the world's biggest energy and resources companies. Political unrest and growing ethnic and religious tensions make the country one of the worst places to do business in, however. Nigeria ranks among the lowest in the world when it comes to getting electricity and registering property for business. It takes nearly 3 months to get through the 13 procedures required to register a property, compared to 1 month in OECD countries. The oil trade has also fueled violence and corruption in the Niger Delta, where energy giants, including Royal Dutch Shell, have been forced to shut down production, often due to a surge in oil thefts. Number 4. Philippines. The Philippines is the lowest-ranked Asian country on the list of the most difficult places to do business in. It attracted just 2.5% of the $76.5 billion of foreign direct investment that flowed to the 10 members of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations in 2010. Despite having massive untapped mineral wealth, a key geographical location between Southeast and North Asia, and a large, growing English-speaking population, the country has fallen behind its neighbors in economic growth. Number 3. Algeria. Algeria is one of 5 oil-rich nations to make the list of the 10 most difficult countries to do business in. Its economy is heavily reliant on the hydrocarbon sector as one of the biggest suppliers of natural gas to the European Union. Algeria ranks among the lowest in the world when it comes to starting a business, getting electricity, registering property, and filing taxes. It takes 48 days to register a property in Algeria, compared with about a month in the average of OECD countries. Getting an electricity connection takes more than 5 months, compared with 2.5 months in the rest of North Africa and the Middle East. Number 2. Ukraine. Ukraine is Europe's second-largest country and one of 2 Eastern European nations to make the list of the worst places to do business in. Since gaining independence from the Soviet Union in 1991, the country has been caught between seeking closer integration with Western Europe and reconciling with Russia, which provides for most of Ukraine's energy needs. The country ranks among the very bottom when it comes to ease of paying taxes, dealing with construction permits, and access to electricity, to name a few. It takes 27 days for businesses to pay taxes in Ukraine, with a total tax rate at more than 57% of a company's profit. The amount of time it takes to pay taxes is more than double the time in Eastern Europe and Central Asia. Getting a construction permit also requires more than double the number of days than it does on average in OECD countries. Number 1. Venezuela. Out the world's 50 biggest economies, Venezuela ranks as the most difficult place to do business in. The South American nation is among the very bottom when it comes to ease of paying taxes, getting credit, investor protection laws, and cross-border trading, to name a few. Firms spend 864 hours a year paying taxes in Venezuela, more than double the amount of time it takes in the rest of Latin America and the Caribbean. The gap is even wider when you compare it with OECD countries, where it takes about 1/4 of the time to file taxes. Despite having some of the world's largest oil and natural gas reserves, most Venezuelans live in poverty. The country's socialist revolution, led by President Hugo Chavez, has brought about radical reforms, with the major one being the nationalization of much of the economy, especially the oil sector, and strict currency controls. All these pose difficulties for private businesses. For example, withdrawing money from your bank account requires not only signatures, but fingerprints and, in some cases, even a photograph. ATMs have strict daily limits. So that's it for today. If you find this video helpful, please give it a big thumbs up and share it with others. Also, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to our channel. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our new uploads. In the end, thanks for watching and see you next time.